Hamas says it's submitted its response to a proposed ceasefire deal to the US Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff. Hamas has issued a statement saying this proposal aims to achieve a permanent ceasefire, a comprehensive withdrawal from the Gaza Strip, and ensure the flow of aid to our people in the Gaza Strip. As part of this agreement, 10 living Israeli prisoners held by the resistance will be released, in addition to the return of 18 bodies, in exchange for an agreed-upon number of Palestinian prisoners. Let's bring in our correspondent, Hani Mahmoud. He's joining us live from Gaza City. And those three things mentioned by Hamas are the issues that they want concrete assurances on for any ceasefire deal to go ahead, Hani.
Well, absolutely. These seems to be the cornerstone of any agreement or a permanent ceasefire or a truce that will bring an end to the ongoing genocidal acts on the ground. The press release by Hamas made it unequivocally clear that these three things are important. Their response to the mediators was within the framework that will ensure a permanent ceasefire, a full and comprehensive withdrawal of the Israeli military from across the Gaza Strip, from the areas where it's operating aggressively right now, and then ensure the free flow of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. And at this point, just given the pace and the patterns of humanitarian aid and all the surrounding elements to distribution of aid across the Gaza Strip, Gaza is in need of a flood of aid just to make up for the lack of many of the basic supplies for the past months. This will happen, of course, in exchange for 10 of the Israeli captives, 10 living captives inside the Gaza Strip, as well as 18 of the bodies who were killed due to the Israeli airstrikes in the past 20 months as the Israeli military continued targeting areas, densely populated areas across the Strip. Now, just back to one of these 2 points, the full withdrawal of the Israeli military and the comprehensive full withdrawal of the Israeli military from the Gaza Strip and the free flow of aid. These were the main 2 issues on the first phase of the ceasefire. We know during the 42 days of the agreement in January, the Israeli military failed to live up to the terms of the agreement, did not allow the flow and a free flow of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, including much needed heavy machinery and equipment and other basic necessities needed for the hospitals to ensure their continuity and operations across the Strip. There was also no attempt by the Israeli military to withdraw from areas that it occupied right after October 7th, and many of the people were unable to return to their homes in the eastern part of the Gaza Strip and the northern part of the Strip, as well as the city of Rafah. Let's remind our viewer, during the 42 days of the ceasefire agreement of January, more than 60% of Rafah city was under the Israeli military control and was effectively in line of Israeli fire. So more than half of the population of Rafah city could not make their way back. So once again, we're seeing these terms, these 3 conditions are strongly visible in the response of Hamas, and the hope now the Israeli military will give a positive reaction to this, and from that point things can move forward. Without that, of course, things are going to be at the still point. And as the Israeli military made it clear in the past few days, it has the intention of expanding the military offensive across the Strip. And of course, throughout the day, just hours before this press release, close to 10 residential buildings have been destroyed. The whole entire commercial street in Old Gaza City was destroyed due to the ongoing bombings. And that did not stop, of course. And as we talk, there more of the drones, more of the fighter jets are hovering and patrolling the skies of the Gaza Strip.
Hani, thank you very much for that update. That is Hani Mahmoud with the latest live in Gaza City. Let's take a closer look at the situation inside Gaza now. 81% of the Strip is designated as a military or no-go zone by Israel. That means 19% is a so-called safe zone, which Israel regularly bombs. Before the war, Gaza was already one of the most densely populated areas in the world, with more than 5,500 people per square kilometre. Now more than 2 million people are being told to cram into a tiny area of the Strip that would make the population density nearly 33,000 per square kilometre. And then there's the barring of movement. Two of Israel's military corridors, the Netzarim and Morag, completely block Palestinians from heading north to south. Lindsey Hutchison is the head of the Global Humanitarian Policy, Advocacy and Diplomacy Unit at Plan International. She's joining us live from New York. Thank you very much for your time. Firstly, we have been looking at pictures. They are from a few days ago, but they have just been released, of incredibly chaotic scenes of people trying to collect aid from this Israeli-American operation. How do you assess how it's conducting aid distribution?
Humanitarian organizations like us at Plan International, as well as our other humanitarian partners and the United Nations, warned before this distribution scheme by the Israeli government was put into place on Monday that this is what would happen. We saw chaos and despair at the distribution site, which is frankly masquerading as a humanitarian aid scheme. That's not what this is. And since then, this week, we have seen continual destruction of the Gaza Strip and starvation of the population because the Israeli blockade remains. And this aid distribution scheme, what they're calling it, is a militarization of humanitarian aid and is not working.
What do you mean by that it is a militarization of humanitarian aid? The UN, like you've said, has said that the scheme violates humanitarian principles. You're saying that it's actually a militarization of aid.
Exactly. The Israeli scheme to distribute limited supplies is really what this is, has been condemned by us at Plan, as well as the UN and others in the humanitarian sector, as violating the core humanitarian principles that we all are obligated to abide by: humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. Having military control aid and choose who they distribute it to in limited ways completely violates the way that humanitarian operations are supposed to be conducted. We see people trying to get limited amounts of food, and it's only those who are actually physically able to get to the distribution sites. This means that women, people with disabilities, and children, who are often the most vulnerable and are the most vulnerable people in Gaza right now, are unable to access this. It's also not enough. This is just part, unfortunately, of the Israeli government and the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation masquerading as an attempt to show that they are actually allowing humanitarian aid into Gaza, when in reality, we are still blocked from getting our trucks in, from getting the aid that is needed desperately by the population of Palestinian people in Gaza, who the UN has just called the hungriest place on earth.
Yeah, and I understand that your organization actually has thousands of aid trucks waiting at Gaza's borders. We are seeing what's happening to people in Gaza without that aid. What's happening to the aid itself if it can't get in?
It's languishing at the borders. Plan and many other humanitarian agencies, and UNRWA also, have so many trucks full of humanitarian relief, of food, of medicine, of other essential supplies, and it's stuck while we are watching an engineered famine risk happening right now in Gaza. It's just stuck there. We can get it in. The UN has a plan. It's worked. It was difficult before the 3-month total blockade to deliver aid to the Palestinian people because the Israeli military kept bombing, killing relief workers, killing civilians, and that's continuing. But we managed to get them food and medicine. And now we're facing a situation where the entire population of Gaza is at risk of famine. They are starving to death. We've seen pictures and videos, and our colleagues on the ground with our humanitarian partners have seen children die of starvation in front of them. And there's not much they can do about it right now. And all the Israeli government has to do is stop the bombing and let the aid community in, who knows how to do this and has proven we know how, into Gaza before it's too late.
And what are the conversations, if any, that your organization is having with Israeli officials about letting humanitarian organizations do the work they know how to do to help the people there?
We've said for now months, perhaps 2 years really, what needs to be happening to facilitate this aid. We are constantly calling and having dialogue with stakeholders around the world who have an influence over the situation on the need for unhindered humanitarian access to all parts of Gaza to help all vulnerable people in need, not just the areas where the Israeli government and the GHF have deemed to deserve or be potential distribution sites. That's not how this works. Instead, what this really is forcible removal of the Palestinian people. And it's not legal. We've constantly reiterated that the Israeli government, as the occupying power, has the obligation to facilitate unhindered humanitarian access, and that starvation cannot be a weapon of war. The denial of aid to a population can constitute a war crime, but this message doesn't seem to be resonating. What is it going to take for people to actually be able to live, for the Palestinian people to survive, and to let us get aid to them?
Lindsey Hutchison, thank you so much for joining us from New York. That's Lindsey Hutchison of Plan International.